Hi there. So Cursor team just announced the Composer 2 model, and it takes over their previous flagship model, which was the Composer 1.5. And there are two things that immediately stand out. One is the cost and the second is the performance. So if you look at their cost, it is $0.5 per million tokens for input tokens and $2.5 per million tokens for output tokens. And this is drastically cheaper as compared to some of the other flagship models such as Anthropic's Claude 4.6, which costs $5 per million input tokens and $25 per million output tokens. So you can see that there is a clear gap, and this is a really good diagram that showcases the performance versus cost on Cursor Bench, which is their own internal benchmarks. So do take that with a grain of salt. But here you can see that way in which we see is that there is a threshold of 70% Cursor Bench score, and you can see all of the different models, including Opus 4.6, GPT-5.4, against which we're comparing with Composer 2 and Composer 1.5. So over here with Opus 4.6 on the high mode, it secures a benchmark of between 60 to 55%, and Composer 2 is higher at about 60 to 63%. Now only GPT 5.4 is a bit higher, but if you also look at what is the total cost or the median cost per task, you can see that Composer 2 has a lot lower cost as compared to Opus 4.6 or even GPT 5.4. So when you take the performance or your overall performance to cost ratio, Composer 2 really stands out, at least according to their own internal benchmarks. But they do also share some of the other benchmarks, including the Terminal Bench 2 and the SWE Bench multilingual benchmarks. And you can see that it performs fairly well when it compares to some of the other flagship models, including GPT 5.4 and Opus 4.6. And this is another graph that clearly shows the performance capability over here. So when you compare it with Composer 1.5 and Composer 1, you can see a very huge improvement as compared to some of the previous models. Now, there are two different variants. So there is the Composer Base 2, and then there is also the Composer 2 Fast, which will provide you the same intelligence but at a faster pace, and it's costing at $1.5 per million tokens for input and $7.5 per million tokens, still drastically cheaper as compared to the other flagship models from other providers. Let's actually put this to real test by using this inside of an application where we will build a full stack application that will be deployed, and we'll be comparing about the functionality and how the UI looks like. Because if we compare GPT 5.4 and Opus 4.6, a lot of people have shared that GPT 5.4 does not really do a good job when it comes to front end. So we'll compare Composer 2, GPT 5.4 and Opus 4.6 on all of these different tasks. How are they able to articulate and break down the task? And for that, I'll be using an open source project called as InsForge, which you can consider as like an open source supabase, which provides you the capability of not only like deploying your entire full stack application, it gives you a bunch of different things, including built-in authentication, database, and you can also deploy it with the help of InsForge. So you get a full-fledged full stack application that can also be deployed with the help of a single platform. It's completely open source as well. It has 5,000 GitHub stars. What we'll do is that we'll give each one of our coding agents over here, we'll compare Codex, Cursor, and Claude Code, and we'll give it the same prompt. So in the prompt, what we're giving is, we are saying build an app which is similar to Reddit with community-based discussion threads using InsForge as the backend platform, use shadecn for UI, Next.js latest version, and has the following functionalities. A community section, each community will have its own post feed, users can create posts, allow upvoting, and finally show the vote counts, comments count for each and every post. So we have given the same prompt to each one of our models, and here we are going to be using the 4.6 on it, and we have Codex over here. So we have given the same prompt to each one of our coding agents. Let's go ahead and proceed. So now what will happen is that right now we are using the InsForge MCP server so that it can fetch the relevant MCP tools in order to fetch the docs and automatically connect it to my project within InsForge so that it can go ahead and do all of the infra level stuff like setting up my database, setting up my authentication, also helping with the deployment. And in a few minutes time, it should be able to now use the MCP tools and scaffold the entire project and get done with everything. And for this, we will proceed with all three of our coding agents at the same time. Cursor has already gone ahead and deployed the app after having built this entire app here, and so have Claude and Codex as well. Now, Cursor was the quickest to do it. It took about 8 minutes for the total build and deployment, whereas Codex and Claude both took about 15 to 16 minutes. So we can quickly see the difference. So this is the application that is deployed with the help of Cursor with the Composer 2 model. And here you can see that I'm already logged in and I can create communities. So let's go ahead and create a new community. I'll call it a test community over here. And once we create the community here, we can go ahead and proceed with creating new post. So let's give it a title, give it test 1. And you can also upload images, which will be stored into the bucket. So let's go ahead and select this. And you can see here that we have now our post also being created, which then once created, we can upvote, add comments. So we'll just give it a minute and we can upvote it. So the counter should increase and I can give it a comment as well. This way, all of the functionality that we wanted, upvoting comments, all of that is supported, replies, make it proper timestamp. And so functionality wise, everything works perfectly fine. We have the community section and all of your different subreddits or communities with their individual posts are all working fairly well. You can get all of the details. So that's perfect. So this is the application, fairly straightforward, very simple UI. So in terms of functionality, everything was very quick, works out of the box, and the UI is somewhat safe, I would say. Now let's take a look at what the UI looks like from Claude 4.6. Right. So here in this, you can see that the right off the bat, the overall color scheme and the UI is a lot closer to what you will see traditionally with, like, let's say Reddit. So in terms of the UI, it does a lot better job. So here it also gives you, so here we'll just give it like test and let's create the community here. And let's see how the posts look like. So what you can see is that right off the bat, what Claude does is that it creates much more vibrant UIs. It takes up a lot of the thinking part on its own, that what the UI should look like. So because it has already been trained on so much of the public internet data on websites like Reddit. So when it's creating the UIs as well, it's doing a very meticulous job here. You can see text post versus image post. We can try out the same image and take a look at the comparison between these. Let's go ahead and click on post. Now we'll see how that post looks like once it gets shared into that particular community. So the community post, and then we'll try out the comment functionality. So here you can see that we can again upvote, we can add comments. The UI right off the bat looks a lot feature rich, and you can take a look at the community right from this particular section. It also shows who created this particular community, and we can create more of such communities as well. So again, as compared to the UI from Cursor, from Composer 2, which is a very clean, very simple UI, you can see that Claude goes ahead and does a lot of imagining of its own, that what a UI should look like. So in this case, it tried to replicate it as close to as possible when it comes to the actual Reddit website. And this is the one that was created by Codex. Now, Codex has one issue that's actually going on right now. Codex has one issue that is going on right now, which is that for some reason, the authentication is not working fully. So we'll try to, let's say, go ahead and create an account. And you can see here that everything is in one single page. So the latest post, the communities and blog, or launch a community, everything is there in the same section. So we'll try to create an account here and try to log in with the help of Google. And you can see that, number one, it is just failing, despite the fact that we are trying to log in here. It just fails altogether. And yeah, you can see that, it's clearly not working. And if we just give it some sample discussions, of course, it'll throw an error. If you go back to the application, the UI is very clustered, right? Everything is being put on in a single page, despite the colors and the schemes is pretty neat, but everything is just one single UI. So rather than the other two different models, which at least carefully curated different pages and having different components, Codex 5.4 has this tendency of just bloating the entire UI, and functionality also you need to go through multiple iterations or have very, very clear cut instructions when it comes to ensuring that, it puts out good quality code. So in terms of UI, what I'll say is that Claude did the best, but Composer 2 was also not bad. Now, if you give it like specific UI instructions, I'm definitely certain that it'll be able to do a good job. And it did everything. It was the fastest. It didn't require any type of additional prompts for it to be fixed. So it was simply just build the app and deploy it. Whereas with Claude, we had to go through a back and forth because there were some login issues, and the same with Codex, which have not been fixed yet with Codex, as you can see here. But in terms of overall functionality, in terms of speed, in terms of the input output token cost, I feel that the Composer does a fairly good job. But of course, we also can compare it to do much more larger tasks. It'll be interesting to see how it fares when it comes to much larger code bases. But clearly right now, from a UI perspective, it's probably second to Claude, but it's the fastest, and it required the least amount of prompting to get the actual app working, despite giving the same remote MCP server, giving the same prompt to all three different coding agents. It was the fastest. It got done in the fewest follow-up prompts. UI was probably second, at least in terms of the overall functionality wise. But yeah, I think Composer 2 is, at least with this example, a fairly good model, and would love to know your thoughts around what you think about the Composer 2 model and how you're using it. Share your thoughts in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.